Hiring is a lonely business. Posting jobs, sifting through resumes, interviews with unqualified applicants, being ghosted. What if you could link with dozens of qualified candidates who are ready to work right now with just one connection? We're Express Employment Professionals, your full-service workforce solution. Every day, Express recruits qualified candidates in your area. So when it's time to hire, they have the talent you need ready to go to work. With more than 40 years in the staffing business and more than 860 locally owned and operated offices, Express helps thousands of companies find great people each year. And they can help you, too. Don't go it alone. Go to expresspros.com. One connection, great candidates, problem solved. expresspros.com, the workforce you need when you need them. That's Express Employment Professionals. Find us at expresspros.com.
Hello to everybody else who, like me, has never been skiing even one time. It's Beautiful Anonymous. 1 hour, one phone call, no names, no holds barred.
I'd rather go one-on-one. I think it'll be more fun, and I'll get to know you, and you'll get to know me.
Hi, everybody. Chris Gethard here. If you don't want the intro, I get it. Do understand that I'll be all over the Midwest of America this week, so if you want to know about my tour dates, those are in the intro. In the meantime, though, if you're looking to just get to the phone call, I get it. You don't want to skip. It's a long one this time, like 15 minutes, I think. 16 minutes. That'll put you right towards the phone call. Enjoy it, everybody. Hi, everybody. Chris Gethard here. Coming to you as I record this on Monday afternoon in New Jersey. Having just watched a ton of the Olympics, and I want to talk about that for a few minutes. Might have a long intro today. Before I tell you about that, I want to let you know that I'm probably not in New Jersey when you're hearing this. If you're hearing this when it comes out on August 13th, that's Tuesday night. I'm performing in Kansas City at the Ship. Wednesday night, August 14th, St. Louis at Off-Broadway, one of my favorite venues. Thursday night, we're in Cudahy, Wisconsin. I've never once pronounced it correctly the entire time. Back at X-Ray Arcade, one of the great venues in this country. The tickets for that one are going fast. Friday, I'm in Chicago. Saturday, I'm in Ferndale, Michigan, just outside of Detroit. Sunday, I'm in Lakewood, just outside of Cleveland. All of these shows are with the great Eddie Pepitone, who's a legend in the game. Keegan Tyndall, who is coming up through social media and is just going to be a household name in a few years. Really great shows, stand-up comedy, punchup.live/Chris Gethard for tickets to all of those. And speaking of stand-up comedy, if you're someone who has supported me in the past, there's a chance. There was a long stretch where I used to go on the road with my friend Carmen Christopher. Carmen is a really great, really innovative comic, has always done things his own way, and is truly just unique and odd and one of the hardest working people I've ever met. And I have great love for him. And he just put out a special too. You can find it at veeps.com. Look up Carmen Christopher. Go grab that one, because Carmen's the best. And he sent me a thing of what he wanted me to say. And then instead I sit here and I get all genuine. I sit here and get all genuine. What did he want me to tell you? He wanted me to tell you, Carmen Christopher live from the Windy City, available to stream on Veeps All Access for just $5.99. That's less than a bag of kettle chips. There you go. Sincerely have great love for Carmen and his comedy. I also want to thank everybody who has signed up at beautifulanonymous.com for our backup. No, what? Not backup. Bonus. Backup, as if it's second best. No, the bonus content. Had a brain fart there for a minute. I always like to update everybody on where we're at. We're at 881 total signups so far. So that's pretty cool. Thanks, everybody, if you've signed up. It's cool. It's cool stuff back there. You can get your episodes ad-free. That's probably the big one. And you get extra, about 20 to 30 minutes of extra time with the caller each week. And then on top of it, if you're at that top tier, you get a secret phone number once a month. You get a follow-up with an ex-caller. It's good times. check it out. I love the Olympics. Do you love the Olympics? I have greatly enjoyed the Olympics. I watch them obsessively. Me and Hallie and Cal, we made a point. We sat and watched it every night. We let the boys stay up late for hours. And Cal was the best. He started picking out weird events. He's like, I want to watch. We'd be like trying to go to like some of the heavy hitter, like 100-meter dash stuff. And we'd be flipping through the events. He'd be like, no, go to that. We'd be like, the women's javelin prelims. He's like, yeah, I want the women's javelin prelims. I want to watch the women's shot put opening round. And it was fun and joyous to see him exposed and to be able to explain where these other countries are in these sports and how these sports are not sports that people necessarily enthuse over the other stretches of life when it's not the Olympics, but that you can get to learn these athletes' stories and how hard they work at these very specific things. It was cool. It's cool to watch him absorbing all of it. I did want to talk a little bit about the breaking controversy, because I'm going back and forth and I don't know what to think, and I want to know what Beautiful Anonymous fans think, because there's an Australian woman named Reagan who was representing Australia in the breaking, as they call breakdancing, competition, which was new to the Olympics this year, and everyone's making fun of her because she was hopping around like a kangaroo and she was wearing a weird little hat, kind of sliding around on the floor, and everybody was like, this is lame. And I saw these videos where it was like people just showing her performance and giggling at it, Beavis and Butthead style. And I'm like, man, we've kind of fallen far as a society, because Beavis and Butthead used to laugh at music videos on the TV show back in the 90s. But even when I was in 7th grade, I implicitly understood Beavis and Butthead offered no value to society. So now I'm sitting here, I'm going, man, sure, she didn't have skill at breaking, but she had so much love for it and so much passion that she took just on passion alone. She got to go to the Olympics. That's incredible. Why would we mock that? There's something commendable about that. Then you read up on it and find out that the breaking was sort of co-opted and run by a ballroom dance federation, and she had been a ballroom dancer, and there's a long lineage of African dance and African American dance that's based on dance battles, that a lot of it is rooted historically. You know, a lot of it has its roots in making fun of goofy white people dances, and that there may have been just a real lack of self-awareness by this ballroom dance federation trying to do this with and all of it's fascinating. On the one level, I sit here and I go, why are we laughing at this person for her passion? And on another level, I go, what a weird thing that a trial event at the Olympics can have me reading so much about the history of dance as a renegade act and an activist act. Strange times. Really strange times that we're living in. But I love being able to, this is why sometimes people on the show go like, how come you seem to like just know a lot? You know a little bit about a lot of subjects. That's kind of my superpower with Beautiful Anonymous sometimes. And it's because of things like this, because I see ray gun on the Olympics, and then when I use the bathroom, spend my entire time on the toilet reading about the history of dance as a rebellious act and how often it gets co-opted into mainstream pop culture. And I sit here and I go, interesting. And I remember fragments of it, but not the whole story forever. And then some of you lovely people call me and I go, I think I once read an article about that. And then we are off and running. Hence how Beautiful Anonymous exists. And I'm so glad it does. I feel so lucky that it does. Especially right now. We're living in this strange stretch as well. Every time, we've now been doing it long enough that we've been through the 2016 election together, 2020 election together, 2024 presidential election. We are in the thick of it now. And it's wild to think that while the show is in its 8th year, that it managed to span 3 presidential elections. And we've seen so much fighting, so much pendulum swing, so many conspiracies, so many moments of real duress, so many moments of real doubt. And I have long said on the show that I think the number one thing you can do if you want to feel better about living in this tumultuous world is stop reading about things and figure out ways to get involved in things. And that so often starts at the local level. I have talked a lot about how volunteering for the first aid squad in my town. I live in a tiny town in New Jersey, 3,000 people. Volunteering for the first aid squad has changed my life. And it's also brought me together with people who I might not necessarily have much in common with. Like, let's be very clear. I am an artist from the Northeast. I am Walspilled. Let's go. I fell right out of the coconut tree. Kamala Harris. This excitement is real, and I'm feeling it. And if you want to know my endorsement, it's Kamala Harris. Obviously, I'll tell you, I ride on the first aid squad with a woman who once went out of her way and said, "You're an artist, right?" And I said, "Yeah." She's like, "You used to live in New York?" I go, "Yeah." She goes, "My cat's name is Donald." And I was like, "Okay." She's like, "You know who I named him after?" I'm like, "Yeah, I can guess." Why are you doing this? Why are we having this conversation? But then guess what? You get in an ambulance where you need to go help one of your neighbors, where there's someone in town who is sick or suffering, where there's a kid who needs a ride to the hospital, or an elder in your neighborhood who needs you to go check their blood pressure because something feels wrong. It doesn't matter what anybody's political views are in that moment. We have a job to do. We go, we do it together. We find grassroots, local things to participate in, cuts through the divisions, and it drags you off of X, formerly known as Twitter. It drags you off of TikTok, puts you out in the real world where you have to look your neighbors in the eye. I feel lucky that I get to do that. And I've talked about it on the show a bunch, but I'll tell you, this week's call really has me in a headspace where I'm so blown away. When you hear who this caller is and what they do, I think you're going to see why I spent the whole hour just talking with them about their job. This is someone who I can sit here and say, "Oh, I helped build Laughing Together. I volunteered for the first aid squad. I'm trying. I try to get out there and do parts for my community." Even Beautiful Anonymous tries to build a community of people who want to listen more than they talk, people who want to be empathetic, who want to know about others, want to learn about others. These are things I'm proud of. This week's caller puts me to shame. This week's caller, real, ground, level, doing the work, making sure that people out there don't go hungry. Literally. And we talk a lot about it. There's a lot of fascinating aspects. I'm very excited for you all to hear this one. I'm very excited to hear what you think are the most interesting parts. For me, hearing about how the caller lives in a section of America where there's a whole infrastructure of very wealthy people who come in from time to time. And then she runs an organization to make sure all the people who work long hours supporting that economy have food on the table. I blew my top, as you will hear. There's so much that we are taught, especially, I'll tell you, and if you've listened to the show for a while, I think you know this. I'm an artist. I'm a podcaster. This is an industry that didn't exist when I was a kid. But you know what my examples being set for me was my dad, who's the hardest working person I've ever been around. And I have so many memories of the tail end of my grandfather's career. My grandfather was an Irish immigrant. He was the manager of a frozen food section at the A&P supermarket in West Orange, New Jersey, right next to where the Thomas Edison factories are in the Thomas Edison Historical Site. Still stands right across the street from the community house, which is the preschool I went to as a kid. That's where my pop worked, at that A&P. And he never had a car. He walked back and forth to work, stocking shelves. So I've always looked at work ethic and being a worker as a thing to be supremely proud of. You have calls like this week's. You sit here, you go, there's so many people putting in a level of work that should allow them to, just on a basic level, you're a functioning member of society. You want to get out there. You want to earn your keep. You want to put in an honest day's work. Well, that means you should be able to hold your head up high and live a functioning life. And so often now, that just ain't the case. The numbers aren't adding up anymore. It's scary. It's concerning. We all need to be in touch with that reality. And I think when you hear from this week's caller, you will feel so in touch with that. She's got the gift of gab in a great way. She's charming. She's doing compelling work that's worth listening to. And as I say in the course of the call, I don't know if this is in the main feed or the behind the paywall, I forget, but something's out there for you. Something's out there that you could be doing. Volunteering a little bit of your time. Who knows where? But there's something in your community. And the reason I encourage it is this. I'm not sitting here saying you should be doing that. You should feel guilty if you don't. You don't have to feel guilty if you don't. People are busy. People are hardworking. People, like I said, there's people trying to make ends meet. People who legitimately don't have a few hours extra. But those of us who do contribute those hours. Why? Not because I want you to be driven by guilt or shame or anything else, but because you will be amazed at how much tension release comes with feeling like you are doing your part for others. The actual health benefits. It's an inarguable way to release tension, to untighten your own back muscles, to unclench your own butt, to let some of those anxieties from your life go, comes with helping others. I've seen it firsthand. I hope you'll consider. Anyway, it's a really incredible call. It's a really incredible call. And again, especially in the midst of this election season, we're a couple months away. The whole world is watching. We're wondering where things are going to land. There are people who look at the candidate I'm supporting and fear that a communist agenda is coming. There are people on my side of the fence who look at the other side and fear that a fascist agenda is coming. There are people who are wound up and wound tight right now. We need ways to tension release. We need ways to feel like we're leaving our fingerprints on the world around us and not settling. And one of the ways that I think we have to do that is get out of this theoretical world where we're reading and consuming and being evangelized to all the time, and instead get active, start small. Reshape your world hands-on. This caller does it every day. And I think having talked to her for an hour, she's going to be mad when she hears this intro because she's going to feel like I'm putting her on a pedestal where she's not a regular person. No. Let me be clear. The whole reason I am so inspired is because she strikes me as a very regular person who has managed to find ways to step up. And I'm grateful that she's out there doing it. And I'm grateful that the work exists, even if I'm dismayed that it has to. Anyway, I'll shut up, get off the soapbox. Thank you all so much. If you're out in the Midwest, maybe I'll see you this week. punchup.live/Chris Gethard. Join beautifulanonymous.com. Most of all, enjoy the phone call.
Thank you for calling Beautiful Anonymous. A beeping noise will indicate when you are on the show with the host.
Hello?
Hi.
Hi, can you hear me?
I can hear you loud and clear. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Fantastic. How are you today?
I'm doing good. My son went to summer camp at the School of Rock for a week, and it was very adorable. And today was supposed to be his end of the week show, and I was fascinated to see what kind of rock and roll 5-year-olds could learn in 1 week. Fortunately, he woke up with a real bad cough this morning, so he did not attend.
Oh, I imagined like a Jack Black, School of Rock sort of scene, but it might not be that. It might not be that.
I was so intrigued. And I'll tell you too, he was like, I want to go learn instruments. I don't want to do a show. And we were like, that's fine. If you don't want to do a show, you don't have to do a show. And then he got there, and on day one, he was like, it was cool. They let me play drums. I don't want to do the show. And then the next day he came home and he was like,
Aw.
Daddy, if I do the show, will you come? And I was like, I'll be there. And he's like, cool. Yeah, we're going to do it. So I was so psyched. I was so proud of him. And then he woke up this morning and I was doing everything I could to justify sending him out, but you can't get other people's kids sick.
Nope, especially in 2024. We know better now.
Yeah, you can't be messing around. Can't be messing around. Anyway, how are you?
I am good. It's kind of confusing, and I feel like I'm listening to the podcast instead of about to be recorded, to be honest.
Yeah,
Listening to
look at
you
that.
talk, it's like, oh, I need to respond. I'm not just listening. I need to make sure that I remember that. But yeah, I'm very excited to be chatting with you today. I'm working from home this afternoon and got the text that the number was out and thought I could put off working for like another hour and a half. Let's see if this works. And holy cow, it did. So here I am
love that.
talking to you today.
Love that. Love that. Lucky to be talking to you. Happy to be here. Thank you for listening and supporting the show.
Oh my gosh. Well, it feels like I'm talking to an old friend. It's very strange. I've listened to you for years. So excited to be on the other end of it for sure.
That's awesome. That's awesome. What would you like to talk about?
Well, I told Andrea, I gave her a couple of ideas. I'm also like, I could go with the flow. We could see where the conversation takes us. It's up to you. Do you want to start with something or just start musing?
I'm happy to muse. You tell me. It's your hour.
That's a lot of responsibility. I never thought I would get to this point, Chris. That's kind of I never thought I would be here. Well, let's start with what I think might be fun to chat with you about, and we can go from there. How's that sound?
Yeah.
Cool. Well, I told Andrea that I've always wanted to chat with you a little bit about, I work in nonprofits. I work within food security. I became an executive director at 25 of a small rural nonprofit. And yeah, it's been an interesting journey. I'm turning 28 at the end of this month. So I've been with the organization now almost 3 years, and it's awesome. But yeah, started very, very young. And yeah, I always just kind of wanted to talk about that, what that was like.
Now, I'm doing a lot of work. One of my 4 jobs now is I work at a nonprofit as well that's in the mental health and education space. So you becoming an executive director at 25, not 5. Jeez,
25.
My son is 5. 25, 5. That's nuts that I just said that. 25.
That would be incredible. I would be like in New York Times.
Oh yeah, it would be legendary. It would be legendary. At 25, I sit here and I go, part of that speaks to you being a go-getter, being a badass, making it happen. All of those things are true. That's incredible. Congrats on that. Part of that is also like when you're working in the nonprofit world, there's vacuums that exist, and the people who fill the vacuums are the people who step up and get things done. And I've now seen that up close. So it tells me a lot about you, that you're a problem solver and a go-getter. And also you are working in a world, because look, nonprofits, it's a tightrope to walk. Always, the legality of keeping a nonprofit, the work often burns people out. I know for a fact that when people work in nonprofits, if they are good and skilled, it often means that they get asked to do more and more and more, because it's the nature of the beast. Mm-hmm. So kudos to you for stepping up and doing it. And it tells me you're not just a badass, you're a certain type of badass. And that's awesome.
Well, thank you. It's funny, it felt like I was 5 when I started the position. Now I feel like I've aged like the presidency, like 10 years and a year. But thank you for all of that. It resonates. I am a problem solver. I don't really like to see things undone. So maybe that's part of it, is like, shit's just got to get done. Someone's got to do something. That's always kind of been my mentality. It's
really cool to hear that you're so young and that you're working in this space. When we say nonprofit, it's it's not a joke. You are legally not allowed to make money as an organization. It has to go back into the organization, whether that's starting more programs or hiring more people. If you bring in money, that money needs to get spent. Talk to me about being the director of a nonprofit. And I think a lot of our listeners who are unfamiliar with this world, I was shocked to find out the accounting is real and a pain in the ass. True or false? True or false?
Oh my, true.
Like a treacherous,
terrifying.
like a scary pain in the ass, right?
Yeah, it's like a minefield, you know, you just tiptoe around and pray you've done everything correctly, because if not, it blows up. You know, you can get in big trouble so fast. So and you know, we're a food security organization, so we get hundreds of thousands of dollars donated in food, you know, not in cash, but in food. And you know, when you have in-kind donations, that's what they're called. It makes your books even more wonky because it's not cash spent, right? Like you didn't get that money and spend it, but it does have value. And you need to incorporate that in your books. And it is a mess, Chris. That's probably the part that scared me the most is that's the thing that has to be correct. End of story. Like I could fuck up anywhere along the way, but the financials have to be correct every time, you know.
People don't understand how real this is. You and I, just so people understand what they're hearing, this is two people, you know, I've only been in the nonprofit world now for like a year and change, but you can already hear this is two people going, oh, holy shit, it's scary, right? Like, you know, I was hosting comedy shows to raise money for my organization. I was like, cool, that's one thing I can do right away is I've hosted 1 million comedy shows over the years. I know how to put together a show. Let me do that. Start bringing in, you know, $1,500, couple grand a pop. We'll go sell out a show in Brooklyn. People feel good. And then the money will go. They were like, well, by what mechanism will the money come to us? Also, we have to pay the artists something if they don't donate their time. So who's issuing those checks? What are the, and who's the money go to? Can the organization donate it, or do they have to write us an actual check? And then I'm sitting here going, well, technically I'm incorporated. I have an S corp. It could go to my S corp, and then I could pass it along if that solves problem. They go, no, because you're an employee of the company. So that could
conflict
create
of interest, Chris.
That could create more problems than it solves here. And it's just like, in my mind, I'm like, I can hold shows as fundraisers, and that's kind of like just printing money, and that's one of the things I can do. And they're like, no, actually, us being able to accept $2,000 is the amount of hoops you have to go through to make sure that $2,000 is okay. Might not make it worth the effort. And you sit there, you go, damn, they make this tough.
Yeah, and it's yes, I would agree. They make it tough, and it's meant to be. You know, I mean, this is like my alternative thoughts about nonprofit organizations, but they're created to be a tax cut. Like truly, you know, in the 60s and maybe 50s when nonprofits started popping up, they were places where folks, you know, wealthy people could write off a donation, and that was meant to be easy. So I don't know what has happened over the past, you know, 40, 50 years that, you know, it is a pain in the butt. For me, we're really lucky because we have a really clear mission, and, you know, money goes either that way or general operating to keep the lights on, pay the staff. But it is convoluted, and it's so much to know. And my mentor put the fear of God in me. So I was very scared to do it wrong, which I think was good because now we're running smoothly. But I had nightmares that like the IRS was going to come get me because my social security number is attached to it. Because that's how these things sometimes have to work. And so I know it's like, if I screw this up, it's not the organization in trouble. It's me and the organization. And so it's this kind of extra level of checks and balances. I want to make sure that things we're doing exactly what we're supposed to be doing to the best of our ability. Because if not, it's me. I'm in trouble.
Now talk to me about food security, because I feel like there's a few things I can think of that might fall under the definition of what that could mean.
Mm-hmm.
That could mean.
Do you want to tell me those, or yeah?
I mean, that could mean a food pantry. That could mean a soup kitchen. That could mean a program to help make sure that kids are getting breakfast before school. That could mean a food delivery service for the infirm. that could mean making sure that people who live in food deserts have access to food. There's a few different things I can think of that might entail, and I'm wondering if I nailed it on any of them in your case, or if there's even more to it that I'm not realizing.
You did nail it in my case, but the organization I work for is kind of a conglomerate of some of those things. So it's a food pantry. It does delivery services. It offers after school or like weekend meals for students. It offers breakfast and lunch for students if needed in all of the schools in our district. And then, we distribute food up to 6 days a week sometimes for folks to either come and shop, or we have outreach efforts that go out. So we're a pretty big operation, but food pantry is I think most appropriate umbrella for the work that we do.
So that's people out there, if they think of a food pantry that's at least akin to a lot of what you guys do. It's also, when you talk about how you need to account for all the food that comes in, that also means any food that spoils needs to be accounted for, any food that doesn't make it back out for whatever reason. It also might mean, like, because let's start to be honest, if you're getting food donations, there might be places like, I don't know, like a supermarket or a restaurant that has a deal set up with you they get a tax write-off if they donate food to you before it expires. But some people might start to treat it like a little bit of a garbage dump and go, well, we'll give it to you right before it expires, and it becomes useless to you if you can't get rid of it in 12 hours. That sounds like a headache too. Am I right or wrong on this?
You're true. It's accurate. And the worst part is no day is the same. And so you can't plan for like what sort of shit show or beautiful bounty you might be walking into. It's really a grab bag every day of the week. But I have a lot of thoughts on, I think just in general, like the charitable system. And to your point of folks, it's like, I feel for folks who run thrift stores, because people just want to like hawk their shit on to you and get a little donation or feel good. And really all that did was create more work for your organization. And this isn't me putting a PSA out, stop donating to your, local thrift stores and food pantries. But I always tell people, consider what you and your family would use. If you and your family wouldn't use that, you shouldn't bring it in. And I try to give that sort of gauge to people, because I think it, humanizes who's receiving the food on the other end. They're no different than you and your family. So please try and consider, what you might eat or what you might still wear or use when you're donating. Don't just give people garbage. I think that sends a bad message to, every party involved.
Right.
People
like
in need don't want your garbage.
If you don't want the socks because the socks have holes in them, you're just making someone else throw out your socks if you send them to a thrift store.
Right. Just cut out the middleman. Just do the right thing. Yeah. I know I hate to be wasteful myself, but just toss them, because I think it sends sometimes a harmful message. Like, is this what people think their community deserves? Big question mark at the end of that. I don't think that's what people think when they put their, sometimes junk into a bag and bring it somewhere. But that's what, the people receiving it sometimes feel like, or, at least the people who are sorting through it are going, wow, this is kind of disappointing. You can do your best to try and mitigate that, but I think it just happens. So that's the PSA. Give people what you and your family would use. Don't give folks things that you're like, well, this is gross, I'm just going to hand it off to the thrift store.
Right.
Yeah, you can be better.
Now, a big question that might be sobering for people. When I started working in the nonprofit space and dealing with schools, I will say I'm someone who has only been doing it a year and change. And I've walked into a set number of schools in that year. It hasn't been that many times. That being said, you have conversations with people, you walk into environments and you go, oh, I'm getting the ground level view of where educators are at, or where education is at, or where the conversation about a mental health in school systems is at. And you go, this is ground view, like I said, and it's sobering and it's hanging on by a thread. And I have more insight into schools and mental health and how those things intersect in a way where I go, whoa, there's so much good work being done. There's so many people fighting good fights. There's also, it's so much more tenuous than people don't realize if they never get this view of it. What's the food insecurity version of that? When you're running this organization and distributing food, what are the things about access to food that are very real and right under our noses that you know about that we don't?
A couple of things come to mind. I'm going to try and remember all of them. One, I live in a rural community, and kind of a wealthy rural community. And, poverty does not always look like homeless encampments and begging, the things sometimes we associate with extreme poverty. I think we think that's the only way poverty looks, or that's kind of how it grabs your attention, right? You drive down, a city, name any city in the United States. I'm sure there's a homeless encampment there now, any big city. And you're kind of slapped in the face with it, right? You can't really look away or ignore it. And in places like this, people can't live that way. There's not options for homeless encampments. There's not a lot of resources for unhoused folks. So folks, if they're in that situation, end up leaving where I live. But a lot of people live in their cars and camp throughout the summer and couch surf. And so I think that's kind of number one, is that poverty looks a lot of different ways, and depending on your area and community, it might not be what you expect it to look like. So there's point number one. Point number two is, at least in my community, it's the workforce who's feeling this food insecurity maybe the most or the hardest. It's, I think over 60% of those who use our services are working full-time, working part-time, working multiple jobs, or working seasonal jobs. So we know pretty confidently the majority of who we serve is, folks who make this community viable, construction workers and service industry. We're a resort community, so folks who help keep the ski lifts running and the trails groomed and stuff like that. They're struggling. They cannot live here. And so it's majorly the workforce is offended, or not offended. Maybe they're offended, is affected. And then we're seeing a rise in folks who are aging in place, who are aging into retirement, who are immediately going into poverty. And so they go from, a higher income to a set income in a community where costs are really high, and they start very, very much struggling. So those are kind of I think the two big ones that I think always make me, remind me why the work is good, because it's, it's hidden, and it's the people who make this community viable. And honestly, I think I kind of say it would be a shell of paradise if all of these people couldn't live here anymore. All the folks who shop at our pantry had to leave, this community would be a shell. It would not be the same place. And so I think it's very hidden. It affects the folks who mean the most to the community. Yeah, those are my initial thoughts.
That's heartbreaking. I mean, first I'll say this. I'm like hearing you say it doesn't look like, we all have it in our mind. You see movies about old New York and it's a bum on the street, or
yeah,
people living in tents in a tent city. And you, like you said, there's this big city vision of it. Some of it also, that has shown up in pop culture and media over time, even in the cities. Living in New York, I came to find, there were times where you would see people lined up outside of a church that was clearly food distribution, and you go, oh, that's actually a family that's all dressed really nice, where if they weren't standing in that line, I would have no idea that if I passed them on the street in any other context, I would never guess, because they don't fit that image. And it extends in so many social directions, right? Like, I promise you, no matter where you live, there's poverty. I don't care how wealthy your zip code is, somebody's struggling. There's also drug abuse. There's also mental illness. There's also any number of things that I don't care how idyllic you're trying to convince yourself that your stretch of suburbia is, it does exist. So in reaction to point one, I tell you, and a lot of it too, me volunteering for the first aid squad, I go, oh, I live in like a sleepy, small, pretty wealthy town these days. And we get calls about opioids. We get calls about mental health crises. You get these things. So that jumps out to me right away in relation to your first point of like, yeah, it exists. And then I also sit here and I go, what the hell is going on that someone can work, you said even full time, and not be making enough to put dinner on the table? What the hell is going on where our elders hit an age where they've been promised for decades that the social safety net that FDR set up is going to be there for them, and then they get there and it's their turn to dip into it, and they have to choose between, do I want breakfast and lunch today or lunch and dinner today? What's going on? That we are failing the working class and we are failing the elderly. That's societal red flags to me. And now that we've mentioned societal red flags and infrastructure of society coming apart at the seams, let's do some ads. There's all sorts of things people try in order to get better sleep, and I get it. I'm someone who needs better sleep. I mean, there's people out there who are running their noise machines, right? Doing all the research on the best type of white noise machine. People who cut off their eating at a certain time of night. People who do yoga right before bed. You can try any of these, but maybe one quick thing you can do is transform your sleep right away with Boll & Branch. The signature hemmed sheets from Boll & Branch are a bestseller for a reason. They feel buttery to the touch. They're super breathable. They're perfect for both cooler and warmer weather. Their signature sheets are made with 100% organic cotton using the highest quality thread on earth. Boll & Branch signature sheets come in 10 versatile colors and all sizes from twin up to California King. I've slept on Boll & Branch sheets. I will tell you, you can feel the difference. And I know that sense of tossing and turning, waking up in the middle of the night, not being able to get back to sleep. I have dealt with it. And I can tell you, honestly, that Boll & Branch is a quality product. And that when you're sleeping in those sheets, there's just less nonsense that happens throughout the night. I don't know how else to say it. They feel better than other sheets. Boll & Branch sheets are loved by millions of sleepers. Look it up. Their sheets fit the deepest mattresses. They also do something that I, as someone who's not good at the most basic aspects of life, I really appreciate this. They label the top. They label the bottom. So when you're making the bed, you're not going to get halfway through and realize that you did it wrong. Right there, everybody should be lining up to get Boll & Branch sheets. Boll & Branch also gives you a 30-night worry-free guarantee, free shipping, and returns on all U.S. orders. Sleep better at night with Boll & Branch sheets. Get 15% off plus free shipping on your first set of sheets at bollandbranch.com/beautiful. That's Boll & Branch, BOLLANDBRANCH.com/beautiful. You'll get 15% off. You'll get free shipping. Exclusions apply. See site for details. School year is almost here. And if you're someone with a family, that means there's so many moving parts, right? There's your schedule. There's the schedules of the other adults in the house, and then all the kids. Everybody's moving in 10 different directions at the same time. There's demands on everybody's schedules. How do you make sure everybody knows what they're doing? How do you keep all those plates in the air? How do you make sure all the chores get done, that the homework gets done, and also leave enough time for soccer practice, let alone time to actually be a functioning human being on your own? It's difficult, but it doesn't have to be. You can adapt to that new school year right now. Go ahead. The Skylight calendar gets it going. The mental load of parenting is real, but this school year, there's help. Enter the Skylight calendar. I'm looking at my Skylight calendar right now. It is on my desk in front of me. It is an actual game changer. And I'm someone who juggles the schedules of a guy who inexplicably has like 3.5 full-time jobs at any given time. I don't know how I'd get through the day without my Skylight calendar. It's a smart touchscreen calendar. It's an organizer for all your chores, groceries, meals, and your to-do lists. It automatically syncs Google, Apple, and other digital calendars your family uses, shows them all together on one big, beautiful touchscreen display. I'm telling you, it seems so simple. It is like taking all the best parts of technology, leaving out all the unnecessary confusing bells and whistles, and giving you the thing you need most while using the aspects of technology that only make it better. It's basically a big giant calendar where a line tracks where you're at in the day, and it shows you all the things that are coming up and where you're at. It's really well-made technology that's tapping into simplicity. It's awesome. It's easy to set up. It's easy to use. The 15-inch size one is wall mountable. They also have a 10-inch size, and it syncs events from all your existing calendars. Like I said, so if somebody's on a Google Calendar and other people are on Apple, you can set it up through the Skylight mobile app. They all show up on one calendar. You see everybody's schedule in the same place at the same time. You can color code those events so that you have an easy visual map of the day or the week. There's a chore chart that helps establish positive habits and routines, allowing the family to manage household tasks, which, by the way, kids love because you get to check things off and you get to make it like a game for them, and they get to see their progress, and emoji celebrations when chores are checked off. It's, like I said, taking the smartest, best aspects of technology and merging them with something aimed at making your life simple. Okay? All kinds of things. Are you completely overwhelmed by all the event flyers coming into your home? Use the magic import feature. You can add them to your calendar in seconds. Email your device a photo, a PDF, an email, whatever. With the event information, boom, it's right in there. Like I said, simplicity and technology working together to make your life simpler. You can do your dinner planning on your grocery list, to-do list, daily weather display, a weather forecast, kid approved, parent lifesaver, and it can also be used as a digital picture frame. 100% satisfaction guaranteed. If you don't love the Skylight calendar, you'll receive a full refund. There's a 120-day money-back guarantee and free returns. I love mine. I rely on it every single day. I don't know how I can be clearer than that. As a special limited-time offer for our listeners, you get $40 off your purchase of a Skylight calendar when you go to skylightcal.com/stories. That's skylightcal.com/stories. Thanks to all the advertisers who allow this show to exist. Now let's get back to the phone call. What's going on? That we are failing the working class and we are failing the elderly. That's societal red flags to me. It also makes me feel like, and you'll probably have more insight into it, my main guess is that people working full-time right now are having to choose between housing and food, would be my guess, based on housing costs.
Yeah, I would say housing just, it's almost always a, response on our application. My rent went up, or, I lost one of my, maybe SNAP benefits went down. And so now they're having to allocate more money towards food, right? It's all of these sort of fluctuating. But in this community that I live in specifically, I mean, housing is definitely an issue. And I think the one that aches people the most, but you brought up something that also we talk about a lot, is that I say food security carpool or food insecurity carpools. No one steps foot, at least in my experience, into a food pantry with only being food insecure, right? Maybe there's
right.
Your car broke down, you had an unexpected car breakdown and it's expensive, and that's how you get to work. And you had to prioritize getting your car fixed. And, most folks, there's a stat somewhere, and someone should double check if it's still accurate, but like most Americans, or a large percentage of Americans, maybe it's like 30%, not most. A fair amount of Americans generally are like $400 away from an emergency. And so if your car breaks down and you have to, cough up $1,500, well, now you are in an emergency. And so it's in my community, opioids are a problem, drug use is a problem. And again, because we don't have homeless encampments and we do a lot of really great work for stigma reduction, we don't necessarily have as many overdose deaths, but folks are using. And we see a lot of people in the pantry for that reason or one another. So it carpools, right? No one ever just comes in because they're hungry. They have a medical issue, unexpected bill, rent went up, they lost their housing, they lost their job, insert X, Y, or Z. They need it. They can't find childcare. And so someone has to stay home and stay with their kids. So now they're down in income, right? There's, endless ways to kind of puzzle that together. But it's a symptom, not a cause.
It's getting me mad. It's thinking about what you see up close. It's getting me mad. It is getting me mad. And I hear you chuckling, and I know you didn't call it to get me mad, but I sit here and there's a couple thoughts I have, which is one, I've actually talked about it on the show before. When you're saying like car repairs get prioritized because that's how people get back and forth to work, so that's a priority. That's not theoretical. I've read a lot about that. If anybody out there is listening, Google car repairs leading to poverty. Watch how much comes up about how car ownership and poverty are innately tied together, that poor families often don't own multiple cars, and that means that people can't go out and work multiple jobs, or that families on the precipice, their car falls apart and it wrecks the rest of their life. That's not a theoretical. That's something you've seen, and I know how real that is. And I'm going to sit here and I'm going to say this. I try not to be... It's funny because I feel like there was a stretch of the show where everybody was like, Chris, you're so liberal, this and that. And a lot of that was because I would rant about gun stuff. And look, my politics lean very liberal, and I know that. But I'm not the most extreme guy any of you have ever met. But I will sit here and say, till I am red in the goddamn face, if you work a full-time job and you're punching that fucking clock, there is no reason you should have to be $400 away from a disaster for you and your family. It's not right. And that's why I sit there and go, I don't even think it's a political statement at this point to go, how do some people control so much of the money and other people get none of the money, even though they do an immense amount of work? To me, if you spend 40 to 50 hours a week not at home, not seeing your kids, because you got to get up at the crack of dawn and you got to go to work, to me, you are owed 3 hot meals a day. That's basic minimum standards of life. Now, there's people who, like you said,
and a roof over your head.
A roof over your head, a dry place to sleep, and some food on the table, and weekends off so you can see your kids for those hours that you're not working. How must that make people feel to sit there and go, I worked 45 hours this week and I got to pick up a second job on the weekend because we don't have enough for a bag of pasta and a jar of sauce. So I guess I never get to see my children. The quality of life that is asked of the working class right now is unforgivable. We're failing the very people who should be the iron backbone of our entire society functioning and economy functioning. So to hear you immediately say how many of these people are working poor that need your help, I sit here, I go, first of all, God bless you for doing the work and helping them. And second of all, I wish we lived in a society where your organization needed to close its doors because there was no goddamn demand for working people to need the extra help.
Well, you bring up so I can maybe help you relieve some of your anger. Maybe this will help. Actually, I have to rile you up. One more point. On average in my community, people work 56 hours a week. 56? Isn't that insane? Yeah, on average 56. In our community, people work 56 hours a week. Yep.
And now you've also told me that you've indicated it sounds like you live in a ski resort town. You said lots of seasonal work.
Yeah.
Ski lifts. So that also tells me the people's listen, and I don't want to go on a goddamn class conflict bender. It's been a while on the show. But to sit here and go, there's people who work 56 hours a week and they can't put food on the table, but I'm able to connect enough dots to go. And then every once in a while, certain stretches of the year, immensely wealthy people are flying in. And these seasonal jobs probably involve waiting hand and foot on people who can afford a second home in a mountain so they can ski.
Yep.
And then they get to go back to wherever they run their businesses, wherever they're raking up cash. And look, I'll be the first to admit, probably pisses people off near you. They get to fly back to the goddamn Northeast to make all their money and never think about the fact that that person who waited at their table or who got called in as, you know, to teach their kids a lesson in a seasonal ski thing, that person, they don't need to think about that person again, working themselves to the goddamn bone just for the right to eat. So we can sit here and so the rich can ski in front of us? What are we doing? Anyway.
You know, I think when I first started working, that was kind of, I very much had like a Robin Hood sort of mentality. Like, holy, how dare it actually, I don't know how familiar you are with the continent of Africa's history, but I lived in South Africa for 6 months and did some studying there. And I remember taking some class where we just talked a lot about Africa as the white man's paradise, right? And everything that any country in Africa is doing is to make it viable for the white man. And not to say that it's all only white folks within my community that come in to enjoy and recreate, but it feels like that. Like this is just like a little, you know, we've colonized a lot of immigrants, you know, we have a lot of immigrant workers who come in and just make this place viable for people with lots of wealth. And that used to make me very, very angry. However, Chris, there's some good news in that, like these people, these part-time residents, occasionally are really, really wonderful and do want to help, but you have to find a way to grab their attention because food security isn't really sexy work, you know, and it's not like the arts or no sports, things like that. It's basic needs, I say, are they're the necessary, not sexy work. And so kind of have to find a way to get in front of people and grab their attention and say, hey, this is a problem and you're a part of it as the problem and the solution, right? You can make this a viable place for everybody to live, but we need your help in that. So I think I've had a lot of success in trying to recruit some of these people that see our community as a paradise to recognize what sort of input they should be giving to our organization to maybe make this place where we live a little bit more economically friendly to everybody involved. So it's, you know, it's disheartening at times, but I think I'm not kind of a person who feels sorry for herself. So I was like, I can either include, you know, our part-time residents or the folks who come in to enjoy this paradise and make sure they're aware at what expense this place is a paradise, because there is an expense for folks. And maybe they'll even want to help. I love tapping into that good Catholic guilt. I know I hear you talk about it on your show from time to time. I love a good Catholic. Those are my friends. I'm not religious at all, but I love.
So if you get some of the richer Catholics coming through, you can squeeze. Well, there's, you know, it's funny because some of it is the guilt. You can squeeze some bucks out of them, but also there is one of the things I miss about Catholicism is the culture of volunteerism and giving back to a community as a base level. So the less cynical part of me says Catholics are raised in a tradition of wanting to contribute. The cynical side of me goes, yeah, you can get them guilty enough to write a check. But I have to imagine, I mean, hearing you say that too, and I've learned that through the nonprofit I work towards as well, can't demonize the rich. Can't do it. Sometimes people have great intentions. Sometimes people are ready to step up. Sometimes people are culturally unaware of what they're participating in. And hearing you say educating people on how they fit into a larger community often does relieve that tension and helps them see how they need to contribute. Yes. In the same way, like I remember when I started with Laughing Together, I was like, we got to find some corporate money so we can bring it to the schools that can't afford to pay for extra services like this. And they were like, yes. Also, rich kids get depressed too, and we're a mental health organization that works in schools. Mm-hmm. And kids that are breaking from the pressure of high test scores in super wealthy districts, it's very, very real. as far as mental health. You can't demonize people. So thank you again for setting me straight. It does beg the question. I talked to you for like 25 minutes and you explained to me 25 minutes worth of what you do, and I went into a rage. You heard it. You heard me start yelling. You do it as your job.
That's not uncommon. I'm not surprised. That happens a lot.
But my question being, it takes a special kind of person to be able to keep the game face on. You're the director of this organization. That's the ultimate game face position. You're not allowed to fly into a rage in front of all the people working for you. You're not allowed to have these moments where the despair shows its face. I would have to imagine that that's part of being the boss. And I wonder how you do that in the face of all the stuff you're describing. How do you not have moments where you just like put your fist through a window and scream in front of all your employees?
Well, I think I'm much more level-headed now than maybe I was when I first started, but it wasn't even so much initially the problem, this issue we're looking at. What used to frustrate me the most, especially when I first started and I was new and everyone knew I was green and I was really doing my best to get my feet underneath me. People would kind of patronize me when I would tell them what I do. They're like, oh, that's so cute. Look at you helping people. And that would throw me into a full-blown rage. I did not appreciate that. Occasionally folks would think the work I do, I'm like, what is fucking cute about hungry people? Look me in the eye and clarify that, because this is a matter of justice. We have a problem on our hands. And so I think most things I can handle, but that used to really agitate me when people, oh, look at you. You're so cute, running around, helping people. And I'd be like, what the fuck are you doing right now? Why aren't you running around helping people? This is like a joint responsibility. So that doesn't happen so much anymore. Because I think I had, threw a few fits a few times. But really now, like I have a staff, we have a really great team. We're a really well-funded organization. And so for me, like my staff are the angry ones. They're like the social justice people. They're in the office banging their heads on the keyboard and swearing. And my job usually is in that room to bang my head on the keyboard and swear with them in camaraderie. And then when we open the door, it's keeping it together. I think the thing I want to convey the most is that, people who are food insecure or just insecure with basic needs in general, like those are people who deserve dignity. And I think if I'm like losing my handle every time the issue comes up, people won't want to work with me. They won't. And sometimes I do get mad. And sometimes I think, that community collaborations and things don't always go as planned. But to keep an even keel and to continue to push the work we do forward friendly and forcefully is, I think that makes me more effective. But I do go home and I do, my poor fiance just hears me bitch all of the time because it is frustrating. And a lot of the times it's out of my control. It's just, you gotta roll with it. So if I let myself stew over it, you talked about burnout, I would burn out. So I try and recognize, I can't change the economy regardless of my best efforts. So I gotta find a way to keep it together and move forward, keep pushing the work forward. Does that answer your question?
It does. It does. I'm blown away. I'd love talking to you about this. I love getting to hear from somebody who this is your daily life and you're rolling up your sleeves and doing it. It's not theoretical. It's not shouting into echo chambers on the internet. It's not expressing compassion, empathy, or dismay. It is no. Let's get right down there in the trenches and do something about it. How did you start in this? How do you start in this work?
Oh, I graduated my undergrad with a bachelor's in communications, and I had initially went to school to be a speech language therapist, and like realized after 2 anatomy classes, like I don't want to help people talk. I want to talk to people, and quickly changed my major. And within my 4 years at college, I started volunteering at a homeless shelter, and fell in love with the homeless. Absolutely. I grew up poor. I grew up in proximity to poverty. I grew up poor community. My parents were working class. Like, I don't know, something about the homeless community. I just felt like at home with those folks. And so started volunteering at a shelter and realized that you could do work like that for a living. And so I went and got my master's in nonprofit management. And during that time, I was the operations coordinator at a shelter in the Midwest. And sometimes I think working at a homeless shelter was easier than working at a food pantry, which is a whole different conversation. But I loved it. I lived for it. I loved wrestling narcotics off of 40-year-old men who were wet and cranky and stinky, and breaking up fights and things like that. And I was 21 when I was doing that work. I was very young. I'm young for my age, my class, my graduating class.
Mm-hmm.
And then the pandemic hit in 2020, which is when I graduated with my master's, and ended up not working in nonprofits for a while and moved to where I live now, and went to go get involved in the homeless shelter, and they didn't have one. So I thought, well, housing, food, see if there's a food pantry, and started volunteering and started getting asked to sit on committees, and eventually asked to start attending board meetings, and then eventually was asked to apply. Their executive director was in her late 70s, and I think was recruiting me to take her spot over. So it kind of like, I actually remember walking with she's my mentor, down the street from a meeting, and she looks at me. She was like a Southern debutante. She goes, "Are you getting it yet?" And I was like, "I'm sorry, no, what?" She was, "We want you to run the pantry. Like, are you getting it? Do you get it?" And I was like, "Yes, ma'am, I do now." And from there, they asked me to come in and interview, and I took the job in 2022 in January. And so I just kind of fell in love with helping people, wanting to talk to people. I am not a math science person. So when you brought up financials earlier, like that was the biggest and most scary thing. But like, I can talk to anybody. I have no problem doing that. And so I always say I'm the lip service. All of my staff, they're the smart people crunching numbers, making hard and big decisions. And I'm just the person who goes out and talks to everybody about it.
Let's go ahead and pause right there. This idea that you go out and you talk to everybody, I love it. As someone who has made a career out of talking to others, I love hearing how much it's just the genuine connection that allows things to happen. You know what else allows things to happen? Ads allow this show to exist. Let's go ahead. Let's do some. We'll be right back. I have to tell you, I have been eating IQ bars as my breakfast every morning for weeks. They are great. They taste good. They have plant protein in there. They're quick. They're good for me as I try to maintain some semblance of a healthy weight. They're a good brain boosting breakfast. I've also been using that IQ mix. The pink lemonade flavor has been a standard go-to for me. But what I most want to tell you about, so IQ Bar, full disclosure, they sent over some sampler packs of their stuff. And I've had IQ Bar many times in my life. And when that sampler pack showed up, my wife, I didn't even know she felt this way. She goes, "Tell me they have the coffee. Do they have the coffee sticks?" The next morning, no joke, I was awake before her. She came into the kitchen in the morning going, "Coffee stick. I want my coffee stick," and did a little coffee stick dance about their IQ Joe. So my wife is a little obsessed with the IQ Joe product that IQ Bar puts out. Okay, between those bars, between the mixes, the mix, by the way, you get a little flavor in your hydration. You also get a lot of electrolytes and all sorts of stuff in there. You can power up your life with superior brain and body nutrition products from IQ Bar. Those plant protein bars are perfect. They're low carb. They're grab and go. The IQ Mix is a zero sugar hydration drink. Get those electrolytes super fast. The IQ Joe mushroom coffee, I'm telling you, there's magnesium in there. There's all sorts of stuff. But what I can tell you is that my wife did a happy dance in our kitchen when she realized that we had some in the house. If there's anything that will get you to try this product, it's to know that my lovely wife did a happy dance over the IQ Joe. product. She loves it. Start each day right with IQ Bars, brain and body boosting bars, hydration mixes, and mushroom coffees. Their ultimate sampler pack includes all three. You get 7 IQ Bar flavors, 4 IQ Mix flavors, and 4 IQ Joe flavors. And today, our listeners get an exclusive offer of 20% off plus free shipping. You go ahead and text BEAUTIFUL to 64,000. That's 64000. Text the word BEAUTIFUL. You get all that. That sampler pack, by the way, it's a great way to try all the IQ Bar products and flavors, which, let's note, all their products are free from gluten, dairy, soy, GMOs, artificial sweeteners. So if you're out there and you're super into fitness, you're running a marathon, these will help you out. If you have errands to run, you need a little energy boost, these will help you out. Keep some in the car. IQ Bar empowers doers with superior brain and body nutrition. These plant protein bars are packed with high-quality ingredients. They're going to keep you physically and mentally fit. Vegan, gluten-free, low in sugar and carbs. All the flavors are good, by the way. All the flavors are good. The wild blueberry, it's no joke. IQ Bar makes the #1 brain and body nutrition bar. Hydration mix. Instant coffee that makes my wife dance out of happiness. There's over 10,000 5-star reviews and counting. Refuel smarter with IQ Bar's Ultimate Sampler Pack. That's 7 IQ Bars, 4 IQ Mix sticks, and 4 IQ Joe sticks. And now our special podcast listeners, you're going to get 20% off all IQ Bar products. You get free shipping. You want that 20% off? Text the word BEAUTIFUL to 64,000. Get your discount. Text BEAUTIFUL to 64000. That's BEAUTIFUL. Text it to 64,000. Thanks again to all our advertisers. Now let's finish off the phone call.
All of my staff, they're the smart people crunching numbers, making hard and big decisions. And I'm just the person who goes out and talks to everybody about it.
I am in love with this conversation. Thank you for letting me have it. I'm blown away by you. I really am.
I've been wanting to have it. It feels really good.
Yeah. Well, you're clearly, I mean, if you listen to this show, you are cut from my cloth. And it,
yes, I that's why I said an old friend. It felt like I was talking. I've been listening to an old friend all these years.
And I want to say this too, because I was getting a little political before. I hear your story and I hear how you came into this, and I sit here and I go, this is not political to me. The fact that things like this are politicized is troublesome.
Mm-hmm.
I'll talk to anybody who wants to get in the trenches and do some good in the world. My guess is that if you get in the trenches and you look people in the eye and you see where people are at, you will demonize less groups of people. Like if you spend time with addicts, you will want Narcan to be distributed in your community. You just will. If you spend time with immigrant groups, you will roll your eyes at how often they are blamed for things when they are in fact taking it on the chin in the very conversations they are blamed for. So I would imagine that the politics of a lot of people in this world match up, but I don't care about that. I just love talking to people who want to help others. I do have a question. On a basic level, you mentioned you have a fiance. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Now, I'm sure there's times where you go out on a date night, or maybe you take a week, a year, and you go to the beach somewhere, wherever it might be. Are you able to turn off the executive director part of your brain, the one that has a lot of sad stories constantly at the forefront of your brain that you are responsible for helping to solve, and the infrastructure of an organization that needs a lot of answers from you? Are you able to relax? Are you able to enjoy some time? Or does this infect 24 hours a day for you? Is that part of the sacrifice?
I do think I make sacrifices. I think my fiance is very patient, and one of the things he loves most about me is that I love the work that I do. I'm very, very committed. I'm not really a big believer in work-life balance. I think that when you hear the word balance, you maybe feel like there should be a zero sum somewhere, which I'll never be able to achieve a zero sum, a true balance. So I think about my life and my work like integration. How do I, integrate work and integrate personal life, and within all of that, keeping the organization healthily detached from my identity, which is something I work really hard to do, because that's when, organizations and directors get dangerous, is when, they become, you can't tell who's who and what's what anymore. I think that's really bad. So there are times we love to backpack and hike, and I love to shut my phone off and get out of service. And I do think in those moments I can disconnect, and I trust I have a good team who, I always say it's just free food. There's nothing, so there's not an emergency ever. It's just free food. So figure it out. If you deliver food to somebody who needed it today, you completed what we were supposed to do. It's okay if we dropped a gallon of milk, or, we received a bunch of rotten produce, whatever it was. Like, the people who need to get it today, they did. We're doing okay. So my team is able to step up and when I need them to, which is really great. And I have a very great board. I'm very lucky. So yeah, I think I do a good job of trying to step back. I will say, as you can probably tell, I'm an extrovert and I'm a talker. And so, like, after work is probably the worst time for my partner, because I'm just like mind dumping my day. After, like, in a weekend, like maybe Friday night, I'm a little chatty about work, but Saturday, Sunday, like, work's off the brain. So it does take me a little bit of time to get all of that out and, out of my brain and into the air. And then from there, I can usually settle down. But then there are weeks like this weekend, I have to work all weekend. But that's why I call it an integration. I get to go work an event. I get free food. I get free beer. I get to host a little thing for a couple of minutes. And I get to go to something I wouldn't have been able to afford to go to. And all I have to do is wear, like, a work t-shirt when I show up. And it's like, that's not, like, boo-hoo for me. That sucks. Like, no, it's a great thing. I'm glad I get to do stuff like that. So I try and think about it more, how can I have the best of both worlds? How can I love my job and be committed, but also have a personal life and a clear identity outside of my work, and have a fiance. When he actually proposed to me is when I realized maybe I'm working too much. Chris, the man had been thinking about marrying me, and I've been thinking about work. There was a very embarrassing revelation. Of course, I wanted to marry him, and I was so pleased he had asked, but like the thought hadn't even crossed my mind that maybe he was going to propose. But afterwards, he had dropped several hints. He was like, I'm really kind of confused why you're confused, and kind of walked through. And I had taken, some comments about marriage maybe at face value, instead of going like, oh, maybe he's going to propose. Oh shit, will you bleep his name?
We'll bleep it. We'll bleep it.
Maybe he's going to propose. No, I didn't notice. I was thinking about work. So when that happened, I thought, this is a nice time in my career. I was about a year and a half in, to stop and go, okay, is this who I want to be for the rest of my time here? Or is it time to get some better boundaries set up? So I think I do okay.
I think you're doing a lot for your community, and that's a lot for the world, because those ripples start local. I am tempted to ask you what your partner does, only because I'm like, the funniest answer would be if someone like you was like, oh, my partner, yeah, he's a venture capitalist who mostly buys up real estate in historically Black neighborhoods, turns them into Airbnbs, and boxes out the community that's been there for generations. Like, imagine if you were engaged to one of those guys.
Nope. I can't. I mean, it would be nice to imagine, like, living in one of these $1 million homes and one of the neighborhoods, but no, we do very similar work. He worked at a community foundation for a while and now works at a university. And so we're kind of both nonprofit nerds. He's a bleeding heart like me. So it works.
Now, first of all, again, that's beautiful. Congrats. Hearing that you were totally blindsided at his proposal does make me laugh. It tells me a lot about you. I also am sitting here and I'm going, for anybody listening, because I bet there are a lot of people listening right now, and I'm about to maybe make them squirm a little bit. I bet there's a lot of people going, I'd love to do something like that someday. I'd love to volunteer at a place like that, but I really only have like an hour or two a week, and that's not worth it. You tell me, if someone shows up and goes, I got like 2 hours a week, is that worth it?
I mean, for our organization, yes. That some of our shifts are, kind of created for folks to be able to pop in. I know that not every organization operates like that. They might want you to come for 4 hours and, dedicate a chunk of time. But, I think that I always tell people, if you can find an hour or two to come in, I think you'll be able to find more time. But you have to get your foot through the door. Trying something new is hard. Even if you want to do it, I think sometimes the 2-hour time crunch really isn't the problem. It's the fact that I'm going to have to go in and introduce myself to a bunch of new people. I'm not going to know what I'm looking at. Those are some of the fears that kind of lie underneath too when you think about just getting involved somewhere and doing something new. So
damn, you're good.
Yep. I always I studied, that was my master's thesis.
It's not just the time crunch, it's the social side. It's the meeting new people as a grown-up side. It's you're good. Because I'm out here and I'm like, I'm only thinking guilt-driven. On volunteering. That's
sorry,
beautiful.
Chris. I was
oh no.
Yeah.
You're the extra. I'm just
sorry.
saying.
I'm talking over you. I think I have a little bit of a lag.
Oh, it's okay. I just see. To me, it's more. I'm not trying to make guilt people into stuff, but I'm sitting here going, I promise you, wherever you live in America, I can vouch for America that every town, biggest city, most remote rural outpost, and every suburb in between, there's a first aid squad or a volunteer fire department or a food distribution center or a homeless shelter or a harm reduction opioid focused place or...
Hello, Chris? Did I lose you?
Hey, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you, but I lost him. I heard or, like a final or, and then lost him.
It says he's still connected. I'm going to figure out what's going on. Hang tight just a second, okay?
Okay. Yep, you bet.
Oh, hey, are you there?
Yeah, my internet gave out while I was giving a real inspiring speech about volunteerism.
I know. I was wondering about the tornado. I'm guessing the weather's bad up there. I'm going to mute. Glad everybody's back.
The winds are nuts. The winds there's like 50-mile-an-hour winds outside my house. Anyway, I just went on a big tear about how I don't know where it cut out.
Yeah, you had a really pointed or. Yeah. I think you had maybe one more or. You had said or, and then I lost you.
I was saying there's something, whether it's the first aid squad or the food pantry or the homeless shelter or the harm reduction clinic or the environmental go clean up town or the work with kids whose parents are working around the clock. There's a place for you to volunteer.
Or an animal shelter.
An animal shelter, great example.
You don't even have to like people. You don't even have to like people.
I know people in my life who hate people who volunteer working with animals specifically because they do hate people. But my point, and you wrote a thesis on this. Like, my point is, wherever you are, you can find a place that would be thrilled to have a couple hours of your time a week, that would be over the moon to have anyone new show up and help alleviate the pressure with just a couple hours. There's something near you wherever you are in this country. I promise you that.
And everyone feels nervous when they start. I work with retirees who come in and they're tiptoeing and they're unsure. I work with 6th graders who come in to volunteer and everyone in between. And I think there's a part of us that we're just, it doesn't matter how old you are, right? Making new connections is hard. And you might not know what to expect, which I always want to know what to expect. But with work, whether it's at a food pantry or homeless shelter or domestic violence shelter, if you're working with basic needs, it'll never be the same experience every time. You have to get used to it. But I think it's really good for people. And it's really fun. Like, I see generational relationships in my work. I see 9th graders who come in and volunteer, get to know retired seniors and build friendships. And there's not very many places where I think that those sort of environments still exist. And it's really neat. It's very special to be around.
I'm with you. Volunteering has changed my life for the better in ways I never saw coming, in ways I never would have expected.
I started as a volunteer, and here I am.
Yeah. Yeah. I love it. I love it. Are there, even if there's people out there going, all right, you two, stop with the pitch. I don't have time. What else, specifically when it comes to food security, are there simple life adjustments that average people can make that help someone like you? Things that I'm not thinking about?
The average person, like someone who's not utilizing additional services, just the average civilian.
Someone who's sitting home who's like, legitimately, I don't have time to go show up and volunteer, but are there things I can do? Are there certain products that it's cooler to buy? Are there certain ways that it's cooler to handle food waste? Like any little things that people can be doing?
Well, the first one is go and look up your local resources. We part of the messaging that we use at our organization is friends, families, neighbors, and coworkers are more likely to get a new guest to come in and use our services. So word of mouth is really important. And so to figure out what those resources are, when they're open, and then keep your eyes out for folks who are in need and knowing that might not look the way you think it might or should. Air quotes around how you think it should look. But yeah, so spread the word. If you know of a good resource and you know someone who might be struggling, you need to tell them. You're more likely to get somebody in and the help that they need than any of the radio ads or social media posts, newspaper articles, you name it. That is way more successful. So that's something that everyone can do. Figure out where your resources are and tell people who might need them about them. That's the biggest thing I always tell people.
Just know your community.
Mm-hmm.
Understand what your community has to offer and be ready to talk about it.
Yeah. I think that's, a part of what being a citizen is, being civically engaged. That's kind of what I would consider as civic engagement. I think folks hear that and they think, well, that means voting. And yes, voting too is civic engagement, but, being aware of what resources are available, what types of people might benefit from those resources, and how maybe you could help. And it's not just, food insecurity, it's domestic violence, it's mental health and behavioral health. If you think someone's experiencing a mental health crisis, you know this better than anyone. You are now the most responsible person to help them, right? You need to get that person from A to B. Call a crisis counselor, call the crisis line, get that person help. You don't need to be the expert, but you do need to know where the resources to get that person plugged in and then let the experts do the work. So, yeah.
This one's been inspiring to me. Now, I feel like because you've thought so hard about all this stuff. I am sitting here and there's a part of me going, man, I try to get out there and do some good, but man, she's really doing good. How do you react when people sit here and go, if I can't save the world, then why even try?
Yeah, well, first, I don't like to be on a pedestal. It really feels, if you could see me, I'm like crunching into my chair, like getting smaller, because I don't really feel that way. I know the work I do is important, but I just feel like it's what I should be doing, and that's kind of the impression I want to give other folks is there's nothing special about me other than the fact, like, I'm the person willing to take this paycheck to do this work, right? Which isn't always very glamorous, but I get paid and helping others, which is fine. But yeah, so I think that always kind of makes me cringe a little bit. I don't want to be too up on a pedestal, but I just feel it. I feel it in my bones. Like, I think if I was working for a venture capitalist, I would be not happy, not in a good spot.
This is a motivating one. You've lit a fire in my gut. Thank you. Our time on the free feed is running out. Can't thank you enough. I know we could have gone in a million other directions. You said at the top, we wound up talking about your job. I think it's really cool, really inspiring. I hope there's some other people out there who it inspires. I also am so psyched because we got this bonus content now. People can sign up at beautifulanonymous.com. They're used to me plugging it. But I now get to ask you 5 random questions. And what's lovely about that is we were so focused on your job. And I think this will be a chance to just talk about anything else. And
yeah, I'm looking forward to.
Great.
Sorry to anyone who, right? I'm a very interesting person, but this is what I've always wanted to talk to you about, Chris. So I'm glad we had some time.
Caller, sincerely, thank you so much. It was a joy to talk to you. For anybody who isn't signed up at beautifulanonymous.com, your revelation of who your first crush was confusing and hilarious. Everything is confusing and hilarious, but you know what's not confusing to me? The fact that you're out there working hard, doing your part for society, helping people who need help in their time of need. It's an incredible thing. Thanks so much for doing it. And thank you, of course, to Andrea Quinn, who produces the show. Thank you to Shellshag for our theme music. You want to know more about me, including all my live tour dates? I'm at punchup.live/Chris Gethard. We have a voicemail line. If you want to pitch a story, it's 973-306-4676. Our Instagram is Beautiful Anonymous Pod. Don't forget to join the Facebook group over at Beautiful Anonymous, the community. This week on Beautiful Anonymous Plus, here's some of what you'll get from the 5 questions. What's your favorite chore?
Ooh, I can't even think of one in particular, but I love the dirty job. So like, we got a clogged hair in the drains.
That's one of the worst chores.
Actually, I love the dirty jobs. They're like at work. Like sometimes like food will go bad, right? And we have like rotten tomatoes or something. Like that's something folks are like, "Do you come help me?" I love a dirty job. So yeah, like it's not uncommon. The sink, like if the sink gets drained in our house, it's me under there with a bucket and pulling out the pipes and getting the clogs out or snaking the drain, stuff like that. I love it.
That thing where old hair gets caught in the drain and you stick the plastic tube down and it pulls all the old hair up.
Mm-hmm.
That's like,
I love that job.
That might be the most disgusting substance on earth. The slightly decomposed hair
horrific.
That sticks in.
Yeah. But I love it.
You do realize there's a running theme of you just going like, let me deal with the rotten tomatoes. I had fun at the homeless shelter. Like this is a running theme. Don't forget to sign up for Beautiful Anonymous Plus at beautifulanonymous.com.